I'm not going to be any smarter when I join this podcast than I am right now. So let me just bank on my base of knowledge.
Even just trying to step into a business and understand where information resides, I've never seen an organization that has that dialed down either.
How do we make a system and solve this problem to help new people get up to speed in businesses, to get productive faster, to be empowered to do a better job, so it's not the way we've always done it? Let's spend more time teaching people how to, be adults in the real world.
The internal wiki's not good enough.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Cheat Code.
Welcome back. You are once again on the Cheat Code and Friends. I'm joined by my illustrious compatriots here, Mr. Josh Wagner, Sean Kester. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Doing great. Ready to rock and roll. Good guest today.
Yeah, speaking of, So joined this morning by Mr. Chris Ronzio. Chris is the CEO over at actually a local organization. You don't get too many Arizona startup standouts, so happy to have him on the show here today, by the name of Trainual. So Chris, give us a little bit of background for the listeners and a little bit about what Trainual's up to.
Yeah, sure. So Trainual helps organize all of the information in a company to get their new people up to speed and keep their existing people up to date. So we've got over 10,000 businesses around the world, people using it in every country. AI is a massive, disruptor, and I'm sure we'll talk a lot about that, but it's really all about just the education inside your business.
Sounds completely redundant. Every organization we talk to is just dialed in from a training basis. And so I don't know why they would need this software, but we can find out more about that on the show here today. Obviously I'm being completely facetious because that's actually what started this conversation and why we wanted to reach out and have you on. Actually, I think the true impetus of this was we do a ton of hiring from a portfolio company perspective, and that often means a ton of arguing with founders in terms of what actually makes a great employee, what their backgrounds look like, what should they be looking for. Obviously there's the kind of education aspect of that, and then there's the soft skills, and everyone kind of looks at education as a signal, but then cites all the soft skills as they really kind of convey what they're looking for. And so the short answer that we came up with is I don't think most organizations and founders have a really great understanding of how talent is actually formed. And so that kind of led us on this multi-pronged deep dive that we're on. I don't know where we'll end, but we got, certainly the topic that you mentioned is central, because regardless of how much effort a team, a founder, an organization puts into hiring, which I think in our opinion is not enough, but regardless of if they're super dialed in, the minute and we just had this happen literally, yesterday, Monday, we had the new, critical employee come on at a startup, and, it started asking the question, how are we onboarding this individual? What's that first, week look like, month look like, and so on. And of course, the answer was not regimented in the least, and so on. And so I'm really surprised at the investment that organizations make there, and then again, fail to kind of follow through and bring that individual up to speed in the massive amount of tribal knowledge that happens in an organization, the pace at which that happens with. So I assume that's kind of the, some of the aspects that led you to, starting the organization and building the solution. But I don't want to put words in your mouth. Kind of give us, hop in the Wayback Machine and give us some context there.
Yeah, so looking backwards in my career, you can connect all the dots, but it didn't make sense. I could never have seen myself getting into this kind of software in the past. But my first business was a video production company that did youth sporting events. I started it when I was 14. We started, I say sporting events, we started with cheerleading, which is what every 14-year-old high school boy wants to be involved with. So it was cheerleading, it was dance, it was swimming, it was equestrian events, it was figure skating, all these events that would take place outside of school that people would pay a lot of money and put a lot of time into, and they wanted to commemorate with a video. And so this was back when it was over-the-shoulder cameras, SVHS tapes, pre-DVDs that were selling stuff, editing on VCRs, and ended up running that business for 12 years and scaling it to doing events in all 50 states. We had over 300 camera operators. We had 3 offices, and so much of our business was training. It was like we get a contract in Los Angeles. How do we put together a crew and train them on how to show up at this event, where they can run cables, which events and venues are union, which aren't, how to get a feed to the Jumbotron. And so everything we were doing was documenting knowledge and putting together standard operating procedures and saying, what does it mean to be a video producer, an editor, a production manager inside this business? And so that's how we scaled. And so when I sold the business, I had other entrepreneur friends that were like, hey, I want that. Like, whatever you did, you were so dialed in with your systems. And so I started helping other people, and I saw every business has this package of knowledge that scale or ranges from just the basics of what's your company all about, what's your story, your values, your culture, through the very specifics of what every individual in the company does. And most companies don't put the time into creating an operations manual, a training manual, or like you said, even a good orientation. And so that was really the aha. It was like, how do we make a system and solve this problem to help new people get up to speed in businesses, to get productive faster, to be empowered to do a better job, so it's not the way we've always done it. And then just continuous improvement as things change in the business. How do you make sure your people are all up to speed? And so it looks natural looking backward, but never thought I'd be in software.
Yeah, I think the other thing that came to mind as you were talking there, the thing that just completely shocking to me, if you don't have, formal training, formal onboarding, formal enablement like that, like even just trying to step into a business and understand where information resides, I've never seen an organization that has that dialed down either. And I think that's only been, kind of compounded by technology and all these different solutions that we use, from Google Drive to Dropbox or Box or, Microsoft, whatever you have internally. Like, there's just no system to consume information. And so I'm
No, the system is
right.
osmosis. It's like, just
Yeah.
sit next to me and hopefully you learn, right?
Yeah. Which
The internal wiki's not good enough.
does anyone actually
Yeah.
have an internal wiki these days? Like, I feel like organizations that actually have one of those, it's like the last time it was updated was like 1994, and some reason
Yeah.
they're always on SharePoint. But
Yeah.
It's like this converging. It's crazy right now. So there's, wikis, intranets, knowledge bases, learning management, training management, process management, project management. Like, all these things are kind of, tiptoeing around just the knowledge inside the company. And finally, AI is this breakthrough that's connecting it all and making it accessible to people. So it's a pretty cool time right now.
well,
So, Chris, I think one of the hard parts has always been, is that there's no one to own it. So they might have a project where they go and they create all the assets they need for that time and place. It might be good for 3 to 6 months, but then there's no one updating those things. I guess, what do you recommend for your customers? What do you see there? Like, who takes onus of this, and how do they keep it updated?
So in the last few years, what we always said is, you've got to crowdsource this. Like, one person doesn't have all the knowledge in the business. It's up to everyone. So you build this into your culture, first of all, and say, which are the different areas of ownership and responsibility that each person has in the company. And so if you own the way that a certain thing is done, even if it's just, how the front desk is managed, or how the office snacks are inventoried, or how the trash is taken out, like, everyone owns something in the business. And so if you're clear about what you own in the business, then you can give ownership to that person to iterate and to improve and to make new processes. And so first, it's cultural. Second, it's like, you want to set up a repeating cadence to say, maybe it's every 90 days in your business, your people are setting reminders to say, hey, of all the things I own, do we still do it this way? Is there a better way to do this? So it's at least prompting them to have that conversation and that dialogue. And now the tools are able to be more proactive. And so that's the advantage of some of the technology we have now, is that as people are doing things and we're watching them do those things, the system can prompt them and say, hey, it looks like you're doing this thing different, or it looks like there's a difference in how this person's doing it and how this person's doing it. It looks like this hasn't been updated in a while. And so now the system is driving that upkeep, whereas before it really had to be a person driving it.
Yeah, I assume, given, the model that you work within and the amount of customers that you're playing with, you've got some benchmark data on what good looks like, and like what are the pitfalls of not doing anything, right? And in startup land, especially the size of companies that we deal with, oftentimes the answer is we're just going to throw them to the wolves, right? And I'm guilty of this myself, right? I mean, I'm sitting in one of our portfolio companies right now. I recently had to hire a couple sellers, and then all of a sudden, the night before, I have this panic attack. I'm like, how the hell do I get these people onboarded? Like, I don't even know what we're going to do. So I'm, scrambling to put together a document, link to call recordings, connect with people, put meetings on calendars, just so they have something to do, frankly, right? So like what's the data tell you? I'm sure you're putting together ROI models for your prospects, right? That
Yeah.
says, hey, those who do nothing versus those who have the basics, those who do best in class, whatever. What are you seeing out there?
So just from an onboarding standpoint, we can shave onboarding time and time to 100% productivity by 50 to 75%. So this is across all different industries, case studies, people that are just teetering along, trying to learn things as they go to get up to speed in 6 months or 3 months. You can cut that down easily to like a month or 2 weeks or even a couple days for certain technical roles. People really just should be able to hit the ground running, especially if you've got a predictable role and position in the business. So a lot of the companies we work with, they either have multi locations or they have like a particular role, like a sales rep, that
Mhm.
they're hiring 10 of, 20 of, 30 of. And if you know how one person's doing that and you see a second person doing it the same way, you can start to develop your company way to do that thing and your way to ramp someone up. And then it's just pretty block and tackle. It's like, what are the software tools that this person needs to know? What's the foundational knowledge that they need to know in the business? We call it the 4 Ps of your playbook. So it starts with the profile of the company. That's like, who's your customer? What market are you playing in? What is your product and service all about? Your pricing model? What are your values, your mission, your vision? All that foundational knowledge is the profile of your business. Then you've got the people in your business, which is like, who do they need to know? Who does what in the company? What are the teams, departments, the org structure? Who's the direct reporting relationships, backgrounds, bios? Who do I go to for what? That's the people side. Then you've got the policies, which are just like the rules. A lot of those that we create. It's like, how often do we pay people? What are our benefits? What
Mhm.
are the cultural norms we create here? And then it's your processes. And it's like, okay, as part of your job, you have this set of a dozen responsibilities, and here's how to do each of them. Here's how you do your outbound dialing, or here's how you log notes in the CRM, or here's how you show up ready for your weekly sales meeting, or and it's very just almost color by numbers on how you get someone up to speed in the business.
What is the typical onboarding time that, and this kind of to everyone, like, has anyone run into like a typical onboarding, like when someone, an organization considers someone ready in that role? Like, I feel like everyone kind of defaults to like, this is their first 30 days, but like, is there a typical out there?
If you're asking me, it varies tremendously by industry. It's going to be a lot different for a surgeon than a developer, than a retail store employee. A lot of people that are hiring, students right out of school to work a retail job, they're up and running in a day or two, and they should be. If you're hiring a technician in a high turnover position like pest control or landscaping, like maybe it's within 3 days or a week that they've understood the routes and they've gone through everything. If you're bringing on a more technical employee like an engineer, our engineers are pushing code in their first 2 weeks, and so they understand the code base, the company, the team, the squad that they're working on. So I think it varies by position and industry, but people know if it's taking too long. They're like, "Look, I've been paying you for 3 months. Why aren't you doing anything yet?" And that's what we try to cut down on.
Yeah, I mean, being role based makes a lot of sense. You mentioned one item in there, like in terms of vision, values, like what I would call like the indoctrination of an employee. Like,
Yeah.
why do we exist? Why do you want to work here? Why is this such a unique opportunity, and so on? I assume that type of or at least in a smaller organization, needs to be owned by a CEO. Like, are you also able to kind of understand, I guess, where that has, that indoctrination hasn't happened, where, you're able to coach customers on like, you've got a gap here. Like, do people know why they're working? They know how to work, but like, do they have that fundamental kind of infrastructure?
Yeah, I mean, that is the place to start. If you're not hiring people that are bought into why they work here, if it's just a paycheck, then they're going to leave the next time an offer comes along for $1 an hour more, like they have to understand, why am I here? What are we building toward? Why are these people the unique people that I want to work with and solve this problem with? And so I think culture and investing in your culture is a huge piece of this. And the companies that care about their employees and their vision and their, where they're headed are the ones that are going to retain employees for longer and waste less money on knowledge slipping out of the door and build more continuity with their teams. And so it's a huge investment in just getting your business moving in the right direction.
So maybe if we even zoom out a little bit and go a little bit more macro with this conversation, I'm wondering, because you've mentioned AI is giving you the ability to, pull these things together in a much simpler way. But what if we even go to the top of the funnel and these candidates that are coming in the door? It sounds like your customer base is really spanning a lot of industries, a lot of different types of verticals. So you might have a pretty broad swath of knowledge to pull from here. Where are people finding shortfalls? Are universities delivering the talent that people need? Are employers leaning on experience and not hiring out of universities? What are some of the things that you're seeing? And is there a gap that still needs to be crossed to get talent up to where it needs to be?
So I think training within a company is kind of the last mile delivery. If you think about
Right. That's a good analogy.
yeah. So like you've got the Amazon trucks and the planes and whatever, like,
Yeah.
you've got the systems, the railroad systems maybe is like our education system, where it's just like, it's slow, it's long, but it gets everybody to generally the right like zip code. And then you've got that last mile where it's like, what does it mean to be an employee here? So a good example of this is in a hospital. You don't hire a doctor that's never performed any kind of procedure before and say, sit down and let me show you on this PowerPoint slide how we're going to do surgery. Like you hire someone that's gone through the educational system, that understands technically what they need to know. They've done their apprenticeship or whatever. And now they're ready to just get that last mile of like, how do we do things here? What is the EMR system that we use for entering notes, and what is our system for flipping the tags at the door to know that the patient's ready to be seen? And those are the last mile things that you need to get someone to be able to work within your infrastructure. And so I think that the job of the education system is, it's to create some foundational knowledge for some people, and then it's to create the interpersonal ability to collaborate. It's community, it's relationships, it's collaboration. And once somebody has that, both the academic foundation and the relationship foundation, then they're ready to get the last mile training from wherever they want to work.
What do you guys, I mean, for just hiring in your own business, like where do you, I'm sure, again, this always varies by role. So let's like focus on like more of the like go-to-market side and so on. Like where do you look for talent? What are some of those signals that you look for? What is your, the enablement and the training side in terms of getting someone up to success? What's that taught you in terms of where you look for talent and kind of where those individuals come from?
So first, we have a pool of thousands of people that want to work at Trainual that are on a wait list. For 7 years, we've had an application. Thank you. For 7 years, we've had an application on our website that has future roles at Trainual that you apply and explain in a survey like how you fit into our culture, what you like about the business, why you want to work here. And so people are like opting into wanting to be a part of our vision and our business. And so that first piece is the culture. And then whenever we have an open role, we go out to that pool and we filter that pool by basic experience. And we see, okay, this person is an engineer. How many years of engineering experience do they have? What tech stack do they work in? Can we teach them the last mile kind of stuff to work at our business? And so then we'll start to curate that list and reach out to people to have conversations. And then we also have an in-house recruiter that is for very specific roles. If we don't have it in the pool, they're reaching out and pinging people and sending them a video and saying, here's what we're up to. If you're happy, great. If you're looking for your next challenge, engage us. And so that's how we've always done it.
Really love that concept, because if you think about how most organizations do hiring, I mean, guys, like how many roles do we have that are open right now that don't even have a job rec that's out there or even a job description behind it, right? And so just that
At least a half a
Yeah,
dozen.
that proactive aspect of, hey, here's the directions we're going to go in, like get in line now. I'm curious, how often do you find when you reach out to those folks, are they probably not available, but willing to make a shift at that point, given that they, probably applied some time ago?
Oh, more often than not. I think our
Wow.
acceptance rate's like 92%. It's like we again we're cultivating this. We send a newsletter to this group. We're just telling them about
Hmm.
updates in the business, because these are people that we hope to work with in the future when the spot opens up. And so there's a lot of roles that we have, like implementation roles and customer success roles and sales roles, that we can hire in a few days because we've got just a full pipeline of people. And so I think that's it's a competitive advantage for sure that we've invested in that.
It,
Oh, it's a huge investment. I mean, the
absolutely.
level of excitement that you're building pre-employment, right? Like that takes a commitment in itself, right? Just to say, we all talk about, in go to market, the email marketing database, and just having a pool of prospects out there that you're constantly nurturing at a general level. I think most companies, at least for the past couple decades, see value in that and have some sort of general nurture out there that people can at least keep up with what's happening within an organization that might fit your general TAM, right? But the fact that you're doing that for people that potentially could be a hire that you have no idea if they're the right fit or not, but getting them to opt into that type of communication, then taking the level of effort to give them content of value, I think is frankly unheard of in my mind. I don't know anyone else is doing that.
There's there's this thing we developed too as part of our product now. We call it the delegation planner. We trademarked it, but it's this exercise that I think so many businesses go through as they're growing, where you're like, okay, these are the people on my team. These people are getting busy or overloaded with something. Who's going to be the next position that we hire? How do we take a couple things off your plate and a couple things off their plate and form this new role that's going to be like the next hire? And so inside Trainual, people are building out those future roles in their business. And so they're putting that intentionality into who is the profile, what is the experience we need, what are the responsibilities of this position. And as you're doing that over time, it lets you again cultivate your network and say, oh, I'm getting a little closer to hiring this role. Let me go find people that are a smaller pool that might fit this experience. Let me start talking to those people. And then by the time you're ready to hire this position, you already have 3 people that would be perfect for that position because you've been kind of inching closer to it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the most no-brainer thing in the world that's, to Josh, to your point, like so few organizations do. Like people are, the biggest investment that you make and the most critical aspect to success that you'll ever have, and yet so few organizations make that investment. I think even beyond the enablement, like that for me is probably the most underscore takeaway here so far. So, but we've talked about the need for this and some of the ways that you guys are serving this up. I'm curious the big bold letters of AI and like how are you guys thinking about automation and adding intelligence to the platform, and have you actually seen that manifest, today and maybe even into the future?
Yeah, so fortunately for us, Trainual is spelled with an AI right in the middle of it. And so I've said AI's been there all along. Like, it was always part of the plan. At first it was just the generative AI helping people create content. That was the easy stuff. You want a standard operating procedure for something, like just prompt the
Right.
system and it'll generate one. And now you're just tweaking it to make it yours. So that's the basics. Then it can get smarter about the upkeep in your account. I mentioned that. It is helping with the maintenance and knows which roles don't have content associated to it and can suggest to the people that own things when something's getting outdated and they need to revisit it. So there's that maintenance kind of upkeep mode. There's the Q&A ability, and so anybody that's a customer of ours, a user of ours, can ask the system anything on their mobile app, and any of the knowledge in the business. They don't have to go to a manager or slide your chair over. It's just like, hey, how do I do this? Or what is the company's process for this? Or what system do we use for this? Or who do I go to for this problem? And it just gives them that natural answer. And so all of this is just making it easier to document and create information, and it's making the information more accessible. So beyond that, like where the technology is going, I think is crazy to think about, and it's crazy powerful, but like a lot of people are starting to train agents, AI agents, to do things in their business. How do you train an agent? How do you keep all of your agents from different vendors talking with each other? Well, you probably need some central repository to manage what each of the agents are doing and who's overseeing each of the agents. And as you tweak best practices, as you tweak prices, as you tweak scripts, where do you do that such that it goes out to not just your sales agents on N8N or whatever, not just to your customer success team, to the bot that's answering questions in your knowledge base for your help center for customers. Like, there is a full life cycle of potential AI agent interactions, and there's going to need to be a central place to administrate that. The problem that a lot of people have with like a chat GPT or these models right now is it's really good for a tiny company where things are not changing or you have very little information. Think a bigger organization where stuff's changing all the time. There's versions, there's whatever. You don't want this thing searching your whole Google Drive and telling people hallucinogenic answers to ideas you had because you wrote up a Google Doc, the other night. There's actually like a curation to information, and that's what we're really focused on, is being like the tools that the humans can use to interact with all of the knowledge in the business.
Yeah, I think that fundamental question of like, where do I go to get the best answer is, that's the utopian situation that most organizations are looking for. I'm curious, you mentioned like being able to ask, like, who do I go to for this, right? Like, what's the right resource? Do you also start to curate like what individuals have what skill sets, or who's kind of what's the domain expertise? That's interesting. I think that's a big gap that we see out there as well.
Yeah, so we sync with someone's payroll system, so we know their position, their role, their department, their reporting relationship. Or if you don't have a system really built out, you can just do all that inside Trainual. But you configure the structure of your business. And then the responsibilities of each position is where I think a lot of HRIS and payroll systems fall short. They've got the position. Maybe you've got a job posting that's got bullet points of what you're going to do when you're hired, but you don't have anywhere that you're actively managing those responsibilities. And if you asked most businesses or most people at businesses, like, hey, here's the list of bullet points that they said you'd do when you were hired, like, does this pretty much match your day-to-day? People would be like, no way, I haven't done that stuff in 4 years. Like, no one is managing that active list of responsibilities, but that's what we're doing. And we're doing it because you need to know who's doing what, because what comes before how. And so in a business where you're trying to document how the best practices and who that I go to, the roles and responsibilities are kind of like the central nucleus of that. And so that's a huge thing people do in our app.
Is it kind of like, are you helping them codify the RACI model? And so that it's actual things that they're responsible for, or they have or how do you codify that? What does it look like?
Yeah, so it is essentially that, but it's like, who is responsible for this thing? Who has ownership of this? Like, who's the process owner? Who is assigned to this thing with a requirement that they know how to use it and or they know how to do it and they're always up to speed on it? Who just has access to this if they need to look it up, but it's not a required mandatory training? And so you've got these like different levels of permission to the knowledge inside the business, and that kind of creates the grid or the map of who does what.
Yeah, I think the interesting, and this is kind of, I won't get on my diatribe on LinkedIn here, but like that's where LinkedIn had the opportunity to like massively disrupt in terms of like not only what did I work on, but what was the output of that project, that initiative, and so on. And of course, they went in a different direction because getting real feedback on candidates doesn't necessarily lend itself to driving application volume on the site and so on. But I think that's just a massive opportunity there. Not only who owns this or who's responsible for it, but who developed the best output, right? Like I worked with them on this project, and it was awesome. They way above and beyond my expectations. Like that aspect in an organization is just something that is so like, what have you done for me lately? Biased, but having a resource for that is just, I think, incredible and could be hugely impactful for organizations of all size.
Imagine connecting LinkedIn to Trainual to like your QuickBooks or your ERP or whatever with all your financial results, putting it all on the blockchain, so it's like indisputable results, how that would change the game for like recruiting and hiring. You'd be able to just kind of survey the world and be like, I want somebody that's had this kind of sales record with this kind of ACV at this sort of company in this industry. And it's like, boom, here's the 14 people. Here's what to pay them. Here's the 2 that are interested in a job right now. And you're done by lunch.
Yeah, I mean, fundamentally, that's what you're doing when you make a referral, right? Like, I know this person has been in a similar environment. I know their results. I've got that connective tissue to them, and therefore I'm very confident in serving that individual up. The problem, of course, is those referral buckets only go so deep. So yeah, just
have you ever seen an app that that takes somebody's referrals? Like if you ask me for a referral to any kind of business, I could probably come up with like 1 or 2 names of people that are in my network, but I'm doing it ad hoc all the time. Like imagine if there was a referral system where I could just log in my referrals for like my top 2 providers and everything people would want a referral for, and then you just tap into Chris's referrals. Like, does that exist? Have you ever seen that?
So I've seen the idea, and then I've seen it bastardized, hundreds of times over, because the monetization aspect is really difficult within that. But I agree. I think it would be, and people are doing this. Who's that? Justin Zimmerman is kind of doing this at a very bespoke level. But the problem is, so when I say monetization is the problem, like the issue is once people realize you are monetizing those referrals, it completely fucks the entire system up, because then they know you're for hire to provide referrals. But I do think that it can't
be an affiliate thing.
Exactly. Yeah. It devolves into that. But I do think the concept is super valid. Actually kind of nudges into a Skunkworks thing that we're trying to work on internally right now. Speaking of Skunkworks things,
I think
go ahead.
Sorry, I'm deep on this idea now. I think you could do it almost like a Google Ads kind of thing, where it's like I provide my top couple referrals. The system is suggesting something that's a sponsored referral based on my query, based on what they know about you. And then there is a monetization that I get paid based on how many people are looking at my pages of referrals. Like, am I a popular influencer? I get some monetization.
It has to be a blind thing, I think. Like, you have to be able to, like you said, hey, what are the categories? Oh, I need someone that does X, Y, Z, in X environment. All right, I kind of fill those in, and then there's like no, that's behind a curtain, if you will, and then someone's able to like select the best fit candidates, and then if they actually hire them or use them or whatever, I think that there's a nice seamless exchange of benefit there. But yeah, it's a hugely interesting concept.
Sorry, I took us off the rails there. This is
I just think that the problem though is the intent thing that you mentioned, right? Like anytime you systemize it, you lose the intent of what happens in those interpersonal relationships, right? Like we all have a big network. We all make referrals to people all the time, and none of us are expecting anything in return.
Right.
As soon as you put it in a platform, there is that, like, even if you're not expecting anything in return, someone on the other side is thinking, wait, what's in it for this person, right? Because now you've lost, like, there's that one link of trust that's lost between the triangle of the referral, right? There's you, there's me, and then there's the other person. Well, we're linked somehow inexplicably, but you're not once it gets into a platform. And I think that's it almost makes it impossible. And maybe I'm being cynical here, but
well, now let's erase the interface, pretend there's no application, and all it is I've interacted with my in-house robot or my AI agent, and it knows everything I want. Now your robot just asked my robot, like, hey, where does Chris get his haircut or whatever? Like, there's gonna be something.
It's the whole
there,
I got a guy concept. You know what I mean? Like, hey, for X, Y. I do think you're being cynical, Josh. I do think there is a way to do this. But so
get off my lawn.
It's a great note around like these. So I say Skunkworks projects, like I'm a big fan of like, and I didn't pioneer this. I think we originally stole it from Google in terms of like, hey, you should have like 15, 20% of your working day where you're just coming up with ideas on something that you're passionate about that would, tangentially have impact for the business that you're working in. But the interesting thing that I see happening these days, and like this is literally an edict from one of our founders right now, like has told every employee, like, you need to find a way to be I think it's 2x, might be 3x, more productive using AI. Just go figure it out. And then of course there's, some layer of like bring that back and, is that a good idea? So on and so forth. But I have to believe that's happening in almost every organization on the planet in terms of like, how do we become more efficient using technology? There's so many options out there. That has to provide, like, create a massive challenge in terms of training and enablement and so on. Because to your point, things are moving so quickly. Like, do you see that as a challenge or as an opportunity with the platform?
I think it's more an opportunity because the more things change, the more you have to communicate those changes and the more important the acknowledgement of those changes is from your people. And so, what business really is it's just a bunch of people interacting with each other to get things done,
Sure.
right? And if the way that you're interacting and the things that you're doing are changing, then it speeds up the velocity that you need to get that closed loop with like, hey, I'm telling you this thing, you understand it, you're telling me you get it, and now you're off to the races. And so I think it just increases the importance for a platform like ours in terms of just how, I think every employee is giving that is being given that mandate to say, how can you be 2 or 3 more times productive? How do we not have to hire that next person because we're increasing our capacity with our existing team?
Hmm.
And that is the way to think about it. Some people have this scarcity mindset of, oh, it's going to cut all these jobs. AI is really no different than hiring a new junior level employee that you're going to delegate to so that you can take on the higher level work in the business. And so everybody that's working at these companies, if they're afraid of AI, it's because they have this scarcity mindset of just holding on to what they've always done. And people will not be doing the same work 10 years from now that they've always done. It won't make any economic sense. And so they have to prepare themselves for this delegation and realize that they have to let go of these responsibilities to grow into these new responsibilities in the business. And yeah, I think they'll have a higher ceiling and capacity for being able to do more work in the company. So I think it's an exciting challenge right now. But yeah, it's just speeding up communication and acknowledgement, and it's presenting a lot of new opportunity for people because they don't have to waste 10 hours doing this boring thing that is now instantaneous.
When you kind of touched on it before too, when you guys were talking a little bit about LinkedIn and recruiting and the idea of curating content for people, the the idea that we see the stats all the time. Okay, AI in 5 years, all these white collar jobs are going to be gone, and everyone's going to be screwed, and all this kind of thing. But to your more recent point, there's no AI that's going to be able to say, okay, great, you've got your Google Drive that is this ideation space and blah 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 blah. That needs to be curated into something that's final version 4.14.2.5. Like someone's got to be able to do that to train the model on what matters, right? Like you can't the AI is not going to say, "Oh, this is final." How the hell did they know, right? Like it's not going to work. So the idea of changing the speed of which people work and what they're working on, I think, just make people more valuable in general if they know how to leverage the technology that's there for them.
Well, I mean, a lot of those jobs, quite frankly, sucked. Whether it's from the day-to-day experience of those jobs or whether it's from the incredibly high turnover and the massive amount of management that went into that. We see that even today in the short amount of time that we're talking about this concept past 3-4 years maybe, like the SDR teams like have shrunk precipitously, right? Like just the amount of that role that you would have to support an X size sales team is already become much much smaller. And quite frankly, the market changes have driven some of that as well. Like people just don't want to talk to someone about getting a meeting in order to see their software, right? Like that should just be available. So yeah, I think the thing that sticks for me is, are you able to curate what is the best, the latest, what worked, and then match that up with who's asking that question, right? Like, hey, where do I go for the best training on this process, rather than just, to your point, some other training that was on someone's Google Drive 5 years ago, and so on.
So how do you think it changes the role of education, of universities to prepare people for school if a lot of these entry level jobs are going to dissipate? I have a thought, but I'm curious what you guys think.
Well, I mean, quite frankly, I don't think universities are training people for a lot of those entry level jobs right now. We're more so hiring warm bodies that we think like can do this basic competence, and then trying to the point of the show, like train them on the job. So ultimately they graduate into like a role that would be truly skill based. I mean, my thought on it is that like I don't think the answer will be universities, quite frankly. I think it's probably some like to your point, like earlier, like you need to have a basic foundation of how do I take care of myself? How do I form relationships? How do I know, a baseline of knowledge? But then how do we extend that into the real world? I think is really where universities have been trying to do that for a long time, and quite frankly been failing in a pretty big way, even through adjunct types of solutions. Like you have to have some sort of business, I'm thinking B2B world here, like business education handshake that is truly substantive and truly accredited at the same time. And I think AI is a large, a facilitator of that bridge, quite frankly, in terms of who's really, providing good access to on the job learnings for roles that people want. Are they creating success? And then, kind of bridging that accreditation gap, which in my experience is the gap right now. Like you can go do that internship, but you're not getting real credit for that in terms of learning. It might be some little recreational credit or something that really doesn't matter. But like, am I really able to learn sales or marketing or product or engineering by, going into that real world environment? I think that needs to shift. Guys, other thoughts?
Yeah, generally speaking, I think universities are probably going to go through a little bit of a tough patch here, just in the higher ed space, because it's just not required to do a lot of things, right? You don't need, like, my bachelor's degree is meaningless for what I do now. And I think a lot of people are coming to that realization that unless there's some specialized skill set, maybe it's a doctor, an attorney, or something like that, like it's just not required. So we've always seen kind of spinoffs of for-profit universities like Universal Technical Institute that does certain trades and things like that. I think you'll start to see an upswing in some very specific niche trades that are going to leverage the AI wave to enhance those things, right? So we'll take UTI as that example, right? Like, okay, well, what do I do? How do I embed AI into working on vehicles and machinery and things like that to make my job better and make it more exciting, right? Like, I don't need to do these 5 things anymore. I can have AI do those 5 things and I can do these things. And I don't know if that's a great example, but I think there's going to be lots of specialty trade type of schools that are going to get niche down, get even more focused on specific industries and verticals and skill sets and things like that. They're going to be able to leverage AI more and more and teach people how to embed it in their job. I think that might be coming because I think just higher ed will probably have a little bit of a sag here until they figure out, because moving that Titanic just takes so long. The good ones will, and they'll figure out a way to survive and do that. But some of them just are going to have to rethink their model, I think.
To see some of these organizations create like farm team, where they've got programs for specialized roles where they want to bring these people on, like Chris, you talked about starting to recruit ahead of time, right? And saying, hey, we're going to have this role, it may not be open, but you market to them. What if they had programs where you can go learn that job so they knew that they were qualified to do it with under their umbrella? I mean, this would probably only work for larger organizations, but you kind of join their farm league, you get trained up. You may get paid to do some of this. You may be actually paid to do it, but then they at least know they have those skill sets, because a lot of university is just teaching people how to learn. And so once they've got that degree, like organizations look and they're like, well, they went to a place that was really hard. They learned how to learn. I can go teach them how to learn here as well. And they try to nurture that talent.
Yeah, I hope there's a solution for early stage like startups, entrepreneurship as well. Because like, you guys familiar with an organization called Junior Achievement? Like they have this great concept that's really poor in execution, in my opinion, like called BizTown, where you like go and you really work within a organization. Unfortunately, those are all large organizations. Like I don't want to go work in Cox Communications. I don't want to go work at ATS. Like I want to work at a 5-person startup that's solving X problem. So I think I hope it gets tackled from both ends. Chris, what's your opinion around it?
I was gonna say I judged a JA competition,
Every
like a
time I
business
say something
competition.
sucks, there's going to be someone on the call that is like, hey, that's my
No.
favorite chair.
It was. I don't know anything about the BizTown thing. What I was gonna say is like the kid that won. This was like 7 years ago, and the kid that won the competition he came up with an idea for a business that was a browser plugin that used AI to scan legal contracts and point out to you the problems with it. And so it was like ahead of its time. Now that's like a very standard thing in the last couple of years. But yeah, I think I agree with you. It needs to be more entrepreneurial in nature. So what I would say is I think the whole education system is going to be compressed because I don't think we need to know as much anymore. I think historically you had to know a lot and you had to remember a lot. And now that it's so easy to find things out, why do I need to waste my RAM in my brain knowing all this stuff? I can find stuff out whenever I want. I can get an answer to anything in the world right now if I needed to. So I think because of that, you'll be able to compress down kind of like a Pareto principle of education. Like you compress the experience down to be much more intentional about like, okay, here's the elective things that you are interested in, that you want to specialize in. Let's teach you those things. And then let's spend the rest of the time building community and teaching you to work with other people and debate and get through, negotiations and tough challenges that we're all going to face. Let's spend more time teaching people how to, be adults in the real world and like what you're going to need to know about government and finances
maybe
and
actually
like
managing their money. Yeah.
managing money. I think the role of education compresses down, and that's pretty cool to think, okay, what if this gets 5 times more efficient and then we get all this extra space to invest in the things people really need to know in the next generation. So I think that'll happen. And then I think as corporations and even startups, as more of that entry level work gets eliminated, that's just like heartbeat work, like, hey, I need a person to stand here and hold this sign. If as that happens less and less, then there's going to be this onus on the company to get people up to speed. And so I think it'll be less responsibility for the universities, because you can't possibly prepare people for everything they need to know. So let's just focus it down. And I think it's more responsibility for companies to have their company university to say, hey, to be an effective employee in this business, in this role, here's what you need to know about us. And so I'm excited for that latter piece. It's obviously very relevant for us. And I'm excited just having 2 young kids for how education changes.
I was going to say, it's really difficult to like answer an 8-year-old's question on like, hey, what president did X, Y, and Z, when I'm turning around and like Googling the answer. I think
because we don't need to know. You can always, they can find out anything.
Indeed. Well, Chris, I really appreciate you coming on the show. I think, the tribal knowledge aspect to learning is such a critical success factor for any organization. Really, really inspiring to hear how you guys are tackling that. And for God's sakes, if everyone listening doesn't go out and put some real effort and financial backing into creating a proactive candidate pipeline, I think you're losing the thread. So great to have you on the show. Really informative. Appreciate the insights on Trainual. And if before I get there, I'll also say a thank you to Mr. Josh Wagner and Sean Kester. As always, thanks for joining me, fellas. If you are tuning in for the first time, for God's sakes, why aren't you following us on one of the 1,000 channels that we appear? And we hopefully will be back on this thread. I know we'll definitely be back with another show, but we may continue going down this rabbit hole on education. Appreciate you guys joining us, and Cheat Code and Friends out.